Welcome to another Fenestration Canada podcast.
This is Tech Talks, live conversations about the regulatory environment with Al Yagalis.
Okay, we're now live, Al, for Tech Talks, so I'll let you take over this one.
Great, thank you very much, Steph, and welcome to all of our viewers and listeners on Fenestration Canada Tech Talks. Before we start our session today, we just want to let everyone know that the Windor Show is coming on November 17th and 18th, and we are going to, we have a great program lined up for Windor, and one of the sessions we're actually going to continue our discussions about windows and comfort. So the subject we're talking about on today's Tech Talk show, we're going to have some additional viewpoints on that subject expressed at the Windor Show in one of our technical sessions. And we're going to have Jim Larsen, one of our guests on the show today, is also going to be present at Windor for that as well. So our topic today is overheating discomfort and cold discomfort that's associated with windows. And our panelists today are Jim Larsen, Director of Technology Marketing at Cardinal Glass Industries. Welcome to Tech Talks, Jim.
Thank you.
We have Dave Goldsmith, Senior Code and Compliance Engineer with PlyJam Canada, and also co-chair of the Fenestration Canada Technical Services Committee, Dave Goldsmith. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Al. Always a pleasure.
And we also have with us today Jim Tyson, Quality Assurance Manager of Lux Windows. Welcome to Tech Talks, Jim.
Thank you, Al.
So it was very interesting. I'd been wanting to tackle this subject on Tech Talks for a while. And over a couple of weeks, I was contacted separately by Jim Tyson about a very interesting series of overheating discomfort issues that he encountered in their business, and from Dave Goldsmith about a cold discomfort example. And sometimes we've talked about this subject in a theoretical kind of a way that, you know, if you've got large window areas, you got to be concerned about cold discomfort. You might be concerned about too much solar heat gain, but it's been kind of an abstract discussion disconnected from real world problems. And what was interesting is that both Dave and Jim came and shared with me just out of interest. They just shared, hey, look at this. This is a situation we came up with. And you might be interested in it. And I just thought this is fantastic. We have actual real world examples of where overheating discomfort has been problematic, where cold discomfort has been problematic. Now, these are not the only cases where this happens, but this is kind of connecting the discussion to real world experiences of home occupants and real world outcomes for window manufacturers that have to deal with customers that may be unhappy with the comfort that they experience with their windows and doors. So we'll begin by sort of handing the mic over to Jim Larsen. He's going to talk to us about some analyses he's done to kind of set the stage for what are the parameters that are going to affect the comfort of homeowners, whether it's due to excessive heating or excessive cold in their homes. Jim, over to you.
Well, thank you, Al. And I think this is going to be a great session to have Jim and Dave back me up from the standpoint is that I'm going to give you a little bit of the analytical, I think Al just called it abstract stuff, and that and then they're going to show you some examples of how this actually happens in the real world. Next slide. So what's going to affect the window discomfort? First of all, where are you? What are you doing? The examples I'm going to present here are based on Toronto weather data. CWC is a Canadian weather energy calculation data. You need to know the window U factor, the solar heat gain, the size, and the orientation. The occupant proximity to the window and the building's thermal mass is particularly important when you talk about the potential for overheat during a winter day and then into the spring and the fall when you don't have a call for heat or cool. Next slide. So quick, simple assumptions I made for this analysis here is that we're talking about a wood frame construction here. It's a relatively low thermal capacitance. There's windows on all four sides of the building, so we're getting solar exposure everywhere around. I've got kind of a medium-sized room. The occupant is a meter away from the window, and I'm relying on the ASHRAE thermal comfort standard, which sets the comfort limits at 10% dissatisfaction. And from that 10% number, you would work backwards to a heating thermostat set point of 22 degrees. Now, a lot of people will suggest that maybe that's too high, but if you want to go with 20 degrees C as your set point, recognize that a third of the people are already uncomfortable. You've already failed the ASHRAE comfort standard, and that's why I set it at this point for the beginning. So, next slide, Al.
Yeah, and these are the parameters that the standard uses to evaluate comfort. Is that right, Jim?
Yes, they are. So,
I
think I was going to say here that the important point for everybody is that don't get hung up on the specifics of, what the assumptions are here or what the particular results are. I think it's more important is that what's the trend? Where are you going towards? Are you getting into a position of being more comfortable or more uncomfortable? And so focus on that rather than the absolute values of the hours of dissatisfaction that I'll show.
Right. Well, and I just wanted to just make a comment that this ASHRAE 55 standard has been widely used around the world for studies of building occupant comfort. And the methods are used by engineers all over the world. Whenever you discuss occupant comfort, even in the passive house world, they're all working with ASHRAE 55. And I believe that standard was developed with large numbers of people exposed to cold and hot discomfort issues. And they established parameters that will make most of the people comfortable most of the time. So this is not just some arcane standard nobody uses. This is the standard everyone uses for this kind of analysis.
Yeah, it is a statistical analysis. It's not going to, answer the question to you individually if you're comfortable or uncomfortable, but to a large population of people, what's the general response to the thermal conditions?
Great, thank you, Jim.
Okay, so the first slide I want to show up here is that on the bottom axis here is the U factor of the window. So we're going from, in essence, double pane clear over on the right here to, triple pane double OE over on the left here. The vertical axis is hours of dissatisfaction where you've exceeded that 10% threshold. And the legend here says small. Oh, by the way, this is winter night, so there's no solar involved in any of this yet. We're just talking about the influence of ambient outdoor temperature. Small window in my definition here is one operable window in the wall. So It's going to be, 10 to 15% of the wall area. Next slide. So now if I double that, if I go to two operable windows in the wall, I'm calling it medium. You can see the impact that has on the hours of dissatisfaction. Click once here, Al. What this line is just trying to suggest is that if you go from one to two windows in that wall, you'd have to go from a U factor representative of clear to one representative of low E in order for that to deliver the same comfort. I'm not making a judgment as to whether that 350 some hours was acceptable or not, or that's the threshold you want to design to, but look at the comparison. More windows requires lower U factors to deliver the same comfort level. Next slide, Al. And last slide here now on the winter night is that taking it to a large window grouping. I've now put 3 operable windows in there. So it's something on the order of 45% of the wall area. And you can see going across there is that, now we're going, all the way, we're starting to get close to a triple pane window to deliver that same comfort level. So it's the comparison there on what you need to deliver the equivalent comforts that's really important.
So, the takeaway then is that the more glass area you're going to have on that wall or in that room, the colder a person will feel with the same window, right? In other words, the same window technology.
Exactly.
So if you're starting out with just a double glazed clear window, the bigger that window gets, the more uncomfortable you'll be. And to maintain the level of comfort you would have had with a small window, you need that larger window to be significantly more thermally efficient in terms of U factor.
Now we could accomplish the same thing that this graph is showing by moving the person away from the window.
Right.
That's another potential comparison you show here, is that I could take the large window grouping and say that at 3 meters away, that same window will have the same comfort level as the small window at 1 meter away. So
Right.
all of these interplay with each other. So I'm fixing those in this scenario here and just playing with the window area or the window size here is this first level of comparison.
So we can see by the vertical axis of this chart that if you've got that double glazed clear window on the far right-hand side with a U factor, metric U factor around 3, you're looking at potentially thousands of hours of dissatisfaction. Is this now over the entire heating season, over the entire winter, or?
Well, this is over the entire year.
Over the entire year.
Okay. It's doing an entire year analysis. Think about what we do for design temperatures for buildings. We talk about the 1% temperature threshold. So we do 1%, 99% in the wintertime, and then 1% in the summertime. Well, 1% of a year is about 88 hours. So put that on this vertical axis here is that, the amount of time that you're dissatisfied as opposed to the dissatisfaction level that we're setting for a threshold here, is that this is, proportioning out to be, pretty specific, pretty impactful amount of hours then. Okay, let's switch gears now to the summer analysis. And now this is all about solar heat gain. U factor has very minimal impact on the overheat that you feel in direct sun. This isn't doing anything to the room temperature. This is presuming that you've got air conditioning and or airflow in the space to maintain the temperature there. And this is all about the direct solar gain onto the body itself. So you can see that at 0.3 or lower solar heat gain with that small window, there's virtually no dissatisfaction, but it ramps up very quickly as you increase the solar heat gain. Next slide, Al. Same effect here that we had before on the medium-sized window. You've got more exposure, more solar gain into the space, and you'll have more hours than when you'll have this dissatisfaction, and you would have a different point here at this medium size where you'd want to consider the minimum solar heat gain there, down at 0.2 for the orange line. So, and then finally, the last slide I've got here is moving on to my large size, my 3 operable windows in that wall. Is that same impact again here, is that window size matters when you're talking to the discomfort level.
And so a level of comfort that you would have, let's, how could we sort of, where could we draw a line through this to say if you were comfortable with a 0.4 solar heat gain or a 0.5, how does that translate to the window size?
Well, I think again the same type of comparison would go on there. If you pick, we're going to be okay at 200 hours. You could do up to a 0.5 solar heat gain with a small window, but you'd have to be at a 0.3 solar heat gain with a big window.
Right.
So all of it, each individual will respond somewhat differently, but at these particular points that they respond, you'll have different requirements for the window. I saw a comment come through on the chat about, is the sun perpendicular to the window? This is calculating the hour by hour solar angles on north, east, south, and west, and then proportioning that to the extraterrestrial radiation. So it is the net solar gain on the face of the window multiplied times the solar heat gain then.
And the solar heat gain coefficient here, is that center of glass or whole window?
I'm putting this in context of a whole window, Al.
Right.
Okay, next slide. So quick summary on all this, because the other pictures we've got coming up here are actually more important than this, is that the window orientation matters. If you're going to talk about passive solar designs, you're only talking about the south side of the building. The south side gets sun in the winter. The east and the west get sun in the summer. The north virtually gets nothing. So you have to control what orientations you're glazing here, as well as you're building thermal capacitance and stuff when you get into passive designs. Regardless of whether the building is passive or not, recognize that the sun sets at night. All sides of the building are exposed to cold. All windows on all orientations will have the same cold temperature response. And then the last thing here is just that, as we're demonstrated with those graphs, is that the window area to room area ratio matters. It's actually the window to room area that's more important than anything else, but we will sometimes express it as window to wall or window to floor, but think about the individual room and how much exposure there is for that room there. Take care of me, Al.
Yeah, that's great. No, thank you, Jim. We appreciate that. I think this is the really significant thing. So I think the really important thing for people to realize, and I think this should apply to builders, this should apply to homeowners, this should apply to everyone, is you really don't, you are not likely going to want a lot of solar heat gain in terms of your east and west facing windows. They're not going to help you much in terms of passive heating in the wintertime, and they are going to be more likely to create overheating in the warm months of the year. So I think the idea that, well, we should just put high solar into all the windows, it might make sense in some energy model that bins the total number of heating hours over the year, but from a human comfort perspective, east and west are not the places you really want to be harvesting solar heat. And I think, we're going to see what happens when you do put high solar on east or west, in our upcoming sessions. So let's move on to our next guest, Dave Goldsmith. You're going to give us an example of a home where occupants were dealing with cold discomfort.
You betcha. So go ahead to the next slide. So this is the photo that was sent to us by a customer. And they're at a development that's to the west of Calgary called Cottage Club. And so this customer is a very astute individual, and he made some observations. He said, "I'm going to read portions of the email that he sent to us. It was one of these 10 pagers." He says, currently our home is extremely uncomfortable once outside air temperature drops below -12 or 14 Celsius and is almost unbearable when we hit -20 Celsius. Trailer park living at its finest. The windows I was sold are simply not fit to purpose and function. My observation is pretty simple. I did not ask for triple pane as my 30-year-old double pane windows at my acreage I just moved from are built to the same or less robust standard than your windows. I placed a lot of trust in professionals that I assumed after 30 years and every federal, provincial, and municipal agency's insistence of ultra-high thermal efficiencies in new homes that dealing with what I am dealing with right now would only be in a bad nightmare. So this picture was taken at an outside air temperature of -18 degrees Celsius and an inside air temperature of +19 degrees Celsius. And he says the furnace runtime averaged 25 minutes, followed by 4 minutes off. He also mentioned that his previous home was an acreage with a total square foot of around 6,500. That includes 1,150 for the heated shop, 770 for the heated detached garage, and over 4,500 for the house. And he has 4 furnaces for that. The square footage for the cottage is 950. Next slide, Al. So just talking about the location in Calgary, the basic the climate data, so to speak. So we are at an elevation of 1,045 meters, and our degree days below 18 degrees Celsius is 5,000. That means that we can be quite cold for the majority of the year. And also, even in the summer, it can cool off rapidly at night. We tend not to retain our heat due to the altitude, and we can have unseasonably cold weather at any time of year. So the home, all I was basing it on was their description, 950 square feet, that very small for a home. The windows were just double glazed units with a single low E coating, Cardinal's 270, which we call a shield low E coating. And this discomfort issues are as he just described them. So I don't have the exact home. I talked to the guy, and he was very angry, and he was just looking for new windows and such. And I tried talking to him about window to wall ratios and all of that stuff. He didn't want to hear any of my sales bullshit. He just knew that this house was not designed and built properly with respect to comfort. So next slide, Al. So what he said about the square footage of the home put a little light bulb on in my head. And I remembered back to my engineering training at USC, where they talked about something that was ubiquitous in nature and in physics, which is what you would call a scaling factor. And so looking at these homes, and I don't think any one of these is the exact home, but these are the typical homes that you see at this development. They're kind of like mini mansions, and these are not inexpensive homes at all, because there's a real shortage of recreational property in Calgary. One of these homes out at the lake would cost you easily as much as the much larger in-town version of the same basic level of build. So I started to think about the scaling factor. Next slide, Al. So scaling factor is simply that when you have an object of any shape, the surface area to volume ratio increases as you decrease the size, and it decreases as you increase the size. So here's some example. This is a cube. It's 1 by 1 by 1. And that could be 1 meter, 1 foot, 1 yard, whatever you want it to be. Let's say that it's meters, but if it's a 1 square, the surface area is 6, the volume is 1 cubic meter, and the surface to volume ratio is 6. You double the size of that, you get a surface area of 24, a volume of 8. You half the surface to volume ratio, triple it, 54 to 27. You've got a surface area to volume ratio of 2, and 96 to 64, you've gone down to 1.5. And as you go up to get towards 10, you're going down into the point something and then 0.0 something. So this is a function of nature, basically, and the reality of life. Next slide, Al. So this is not the house, but this from the website is a suggested house and floor plan. And so you can see it's just kind of a little mini mansion, a kind of modern cabin, and the living area and the square footage is quite small. So when Jim talks about thermal mass, he's talking about the thermal mass of the entire building, but occupant discomfort, think about the thermal mass of the air within the building. And air does not have much mass, right? But the more the volume of the air, the more the thermal mass you have, and the less quickly that the air will cool down in all parts of the house. On the other hand, if you're living in a crate that's 1 meter by 1 meter, it's going to cool down very, very quickly. And this is the reason why this fellow's furnace is on 24 minutes and off 5 minutes. It's simply because the volume of the air in the building is so small, and the surface area of the building that can shed the heat, and particularly the surface area of the windows, is so large that if you think about the person, you look at bedroom 1 on the ground floor right there, and imagine sleeping in that bedroom, and there's a big window by your head, another big window off to the left of the bed as you lie there, and it's minus 20 out, and God forbid it go down to minus 30 out. You're probably going to need an electric blanket to sleep in that bed. And these are basically, you know, the facts of life, the facts of physics. So I forget what the
basically,
next, go ahead, Al.
yeah, so I guess, so windows that would have been perfectly satisfactory in a large home where the surface to, what was that ratio? Surface
Square to volume, surface to
the
volume
surface
ratio.
to volume ratio in the large home was probably very low. And the windows that would have been satisfactory in that large home with the low surface to volume ratio, those same windows could be very unsatisfactory in a small home, a tiny home where the surface to volume ratio is much greater.
That's correct.
Right. So it's not the same thing that Jim was talking about, but in some ways it's a similar concept, is that there's a lot of surface that you can lose heat from and not a lot of volume, not a lot of heat storage capacity inside that space to retain that heat. So
You've got it, Al. So I don't know if I had do we have a next slide, Al?
yes.
And so, yeah, these were the takeaways, actually, that you just described.
So we've got here, the smaller the home, the greater the surface to volume ratio, and the windows will tend to have more influence on occupant comfort. The larger the home, the lesser the surface to volume ratio, and the windows will tend to have less influence on occupant comfort. And the greater the glass surface to floor area ratio, the more influence window glass choices will have on occupant comfort.
Absolutely.
So essentially, by looking at a very small home, the problems are magnified here. What could improve the cold discomfort of this homeowner? It's interesting that it sounds that he explicitly chose not to go with triple pane windows based on his experience in the large home, which suggests that maybe the builder was suggesting he should have triple glazed windows, and he just thought, no, I won't need them.
Yes,
but would
that's
that
right.
have helped? Would that have helped?
Well, it certainly would have helped. And in hindsight, he really should have used the very best, very lowest U-value windows available on the market. Something like a triple glazed with 2 low E coatings. Even that might not completely ameliorate the problem. When you think about what your U value is on a window and how it compares to R value in a wall, there's a reason why we quote windows based on U value and not R value, because try telling your customer that it's got R40 walls, that their window is an R5, and if they order the very best window available on the market, they can get that up to R8. It's just the windows are the vulnerable point in the building. So I think and the builder, just like the customer, is relying on the industry and the perception that legislations have made buildings and windows much more thermally effective in recent years, and that something that meets code is going to be satisfactory, and that's a false assumption. But the builder doesn't know, the customer doesn't know. The ones with the know are people at Fenestration Canada and the people in on this call now, judging by the types of people I see that we have as attendees. Fenestration industry seasoned veterans would have some understanding of this, but nobody else does. And I have to say, I think, when he said that we made shit windows and we should have known better, that kind of got me a little bit. As an industry, we're letting these people down.
Well, in other words, if we don't make appropriate recommendations, and this is really where a window package that would be fine for a typical new build home in Calgary may not be appropriate in a small home like this, right?
And if you look at actual cabins in the woods, they have the bedrooms in the loft invariably, right? I mean, you don't want to run down and throw wood in the stove every hour when you're trying to sleep. So they put the bedrooms in the loft because heat rises, right? So in a house like this, I would start by putting all the bedrooms in the loft, I think.
Great. Well, thank you for this example, Dave. So this is a cold discomfort, and yes, could it be improved? It could be improved with windows that had much lower U factor, because as Jim pointed out, it's when it comes to cold discomfort, it's the U factor that is the property that is going to retain the most heat in the home and result in the greatest comfort when you're close to the presence of a window, close to the window in proximity. Let's take a look at an overheating discomfort example. And here we're going to have Jim Tyson of Lux Windows walk us through this one. Jim.
Sure, let's move to the next slide showing the picture there, Al.
Yeah, this is a newly constructed home in Southeast Calgary.
So opposite to Dave's case study here, this is an overheating example. And this picture actually came to my attention from one of our service technicians. He was on a standard service call. Customer said, something's wrong with my window. I need you to look at it. So the technician called me and said, I think you're going to want to look at this yourself because I have never seen something like this before. And this window is melted essentially beyond repair. So I went to the home and met the homeowner. Reviewing the file, I saw a pretty typical window package for this particular home builder. It was a triple glazed, clear 180 glass configuration in all the windows. And it was an aluminum exterior, vinyl interior package. So the first thing I saw when I was in the home was there was an automatic cellular blind system, and it had a reflective insert within the honeycomb. So it was designed to direct heat back outwards. And I essentially told the homeowner that, your window covering is what caused this damage to the window. He did not receive that well. He felt that I was deflecting a poor product and that I wasn't owning up to a defective window. So yeah, this kind of shows you how extreme it can get in these situations. So
let me ask you a question, Jim. So
yeah,
why did the homeowner choose these blinds? He chose heat reflective blinds. Which way is this window facing, and what problem was he trying to solve with the blinds?
Well, I wasn't privy to all the discussions before the window got to this state, but what I can assume is that he was just so uncomfortable in this master bedroom that he went and sought out a window covering that would assist with heat. So he went out and looked for a window covering that would direct the extreme heat back outwards. Little did he know that could cause this kind of an issue on the interior of his window. So this home does face, not quite due west, but pretty much faces west. A little bit of the south elevation too does face. So yeah, so basically here we were at, and homeowners looking at us saying, what are you going to do about this kind of thing, right? Like Dave said, the homeowner just thought it was subpar windows when in fact it was a configuration that caused this. So if you go to the
So in other words, so this was a very high solar gain window, right?
yeah, so the windows are selected as triple pane, clear 180. They did have sliding doors in the home too, which were dual pane, but they selected 366 ID9 coatings on those dual pane doors. And funny enough, the doors were never an issue for the customer, even though they were dual pane versus triple pane.
So Jim Larsen, what would be the solar heat gain coefficient of that kind of product, clear 180 in a triple?
That's going to be, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. It's going to be the glass on the order of 0.7.
Okay, so in other words, very high solar heat gain product.
Yeah, you're going to have a window product that's probably over 0.6.
With as an actual window, right?
You know,
Yeah.
and the issue here becomes is that you're allowing the sun to come through, and then it's getting to the blind, reflecting back as room infrared heat, and it's trapped by the insulating value of the triple pane unit then.
Right. So yeah, so this is actually like,
A greenhouse.
like a greenhouse. Exactly. Yes. So in fact, there was nothing wrong with the window, but it seems that the blind, because it's reflecting heat, that solar heat gain is now coming through the window, and it's trapped back and forth in the cavity between heat reflective blind and heat reflective glass. And so that's what caused the window frame to become so hot that it began to distort from the heat, which is not a normal condition that you would expose a window to. So so back to you, Jim. You guys.
Yeah, so you can go to the next slide, Al. So we kind of talked about the location and the makeup, and so the interesting part of this is how it was resolved. So we had quite an upset homeowner. So what we decided to do was actually replace the window at cost, but we made a caveat to that, and that the glass in the new window had to be upgraded. So in the new window, we put a 270 clear 180 configuration of glass, and we installed it. Homeowner was very happy that we were taking care of him. He thought, oh, finally they're owning up to their problematic window, and he got his new window. So that was kind of where I left it off with the homeowner. But then about 2 to 3 weeks later, the home builder called me requesting a quote for glass replacements in basically the whole west elevation and some in the south elevation. So this homeowner was so monumentally, like the change was so monumental to them that they actually insisted that their home builder replace glass in other problematic rooms.
And did the builder do that?
Yeah, they went ahead with it, and we sent our crews to go and change the glass. And from what I understand, the homeowner is very happy with comfort levels in his home after the glass changes.
So basically, this problem arose from really an inappropriate choice of glass to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that the builder was using this glass as their standard glass in all these homes?
Yeah, they were a new customer to us, and this was what they were requesting. This is kind of outside of the scope of what we normally sell. We really always push for low E coatings, multiple and triple pane. So, we do try to, assist people and say we recommend this or that, but this builder had their modeling done, and this is what they went with. Every home is supplied in air conditioning as well as this type of package. So it just kind of shows how it really isn't the right plan. Like Jim Larsen said, your south side is probably what you want to aim for, and the east and west are just going to cause these problems.
Something that really
Yes.
jumped out at me looking at the location, if you go back a slide, Al, or a couple slides, it's facing a lake. So the west side is facing a lake. And that's always a recipe for trouble because you're getting the direct sun and you're getting the reflected sun off the lake.
Yeah.
And so we have a metal clad wood sliding patio door that has a vinyl parting stop that is exposed to the exterior. And we occasionally get reports of that vinyl parting stop shrinking. And it's always this particular scenario, black metal clad door. It's getting baked between the sun that comes, the direct sun, the sun that reflects off the lake, and the cladding gets so hot that you would scald yourself to put your hand on it, and the parting stop shrinks. If vinyl is heated to more than 65 degrees Celsius, normal compound vinyl that's used in most window systems, what will happen is there's basically, it's kind of like it's a tempered piece of glass as it comes out of the extruder because they cool it quickly and it has built-in stresses in it. And when you heat it above 65 degrees Celsius, that stress gets relieved and the vinyl will shrink and warp and deform. The answer to that would be there are different vinyl compounds that can get you up to like 90 degrees Celsius, but they are 4 times the price of a standard vinyl compound because we had to look at that just for our parting stop on our patio door.
Yeah, to further to that, all the mall connectors on the interior of that window and the screen retainers had shrunk almost a whole inch. So, you know, that was one of the things the service tech was so baffled about is how parts that left our building touching each other had now shrunk a whole inch. And it's like Dave said, that extreme heat can just shrink that vinyl.
And that is true. That is certainly true. So I think, so sounds like the kind of glass you would normally have recommended if somebody asked you, Jim, would have been something like the low E270 clear, low E180, which would provide significant reduction of solar heat gain, but also result in a high degree of occupant comfort.
Yeah, it's that's a go-to configuration here at Lux. I mean, we do a lot of 270 clear. That's a pretty high volume, but 270 clear 180, and we also do a 366 180 I89 on occasions, which is it's quite a Cadillac piece of glass. It in fact, when the dew points are in such a way, we get some exterior condensation on the outer pane in those scenarios sometimes too. So it's almost so extreme in the other direction that you get calls from the opposite end, or why are my windows fogging? Well, it's insulating so well that that's causing your outer pane to be that cold, right? So
Right. Yeah.
So Al, just so you know, we have a couple questions in the Q&A and a couple in the chat. Just for
okay.
information.
Well, let's have a look at those. Let's see. We had the perpendicular question. Somebody's asking if they can download this later. Yes, it'll be on YouTube, I believe, right, Steph?
Yeah, it's on YouTube right now. It's live and it's gonna stay there after.
Right. Okay. There's a question from Raymond Roy. He's asking, the blinds were inside the home facing surface number 6. Is that, he's asking if that's correct. Is that correct, Jim?
That's correct.
Yes. Patrick Flannery says you must have been able to cook an egg between that person's blind and the window. Yeah, I'm sure if you threw an egg on it, it would have fried on the surface of the glass. Let's see. Somebody's commented contractors need to see this. You know, it's true. And, you know, hopefully, you know, window salespersons should have some familiarity with these issues ideally and be recommending glass packages that are known not to cause problems. It's interesting, Jim, that you made a comment with respect to modeling, that the builder had done their thermal modeling. This sounds like the problem that we've been seeing in British Columbia, where some of the less experienced energy advisors look at high solar gain windows as a great way to reduce the heating load in a building. And so when they put very high solar gain glass into their Hot 2000 program, they can really reduce the size of the heating plant in the home. And they figure, man, we're just harvesting this solar heat, free heat, and it's fantastic. This is going to be a less expensive, energy efficient home because we're going to capture so much solar heat. And yet that decision, by having these high solar gain windows on all sides of the house, leads to a condition like this, where essentially the home is extremely uncomfortable to the occupants when you've got excessive solar heat gain that you can't use.
Al, Jim Larsen, can I offer a comment?
Of course.
Particular to the energy modeling, as you mentioned there, recall that when you're doing this modeling, what you're actually doing is looking at satisfying the thermostat. In the wintertime, the thermostat calls for heat when the building is cool. But when it overheats, when it goes above the thermostat, it doesn't care. In the summertime, it's the opposite scenario on that setting. But the question is the thermostat on? Do you have the heating? The heating stat is going to be satisfied in the spring and the fall, but you've still got all that opportunity for overheat when it's not cold outside.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a comment from Robert Jatra. He says, glass is actually totally opaque to infrared generated at low temperatures, like the temperature the blind will be, compared to the infrared generated at high temperature, like the sun. That is the principle of the greenhouse effect. So these windows with this blind were doomed. So Robert's an engineer. I guess he's put in technical terms here, what's going on here. But
well, Al, Jim Larsen again.
Yeah,
I mean, that's almost exactly what I was saying. Is that
yes,
shortwave infrared will come through the windows, and then it gets reflected off that blind, and you've got the far infrared insulating value of the glass that's trapping the heat in that cavity then.
So shortwave infrared is passing through the glass. When it heats up the reflective blind, it's now long wave infrared, which the glass is now reflecting. It's not, that long wave infrared is not passing out from the inside to the outside. It's trapped, between the low E coating of the glass and the blind. Is that the idea?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Russell asks, is there any discussion about the loss of visible transmittance and reduced color rendering index due to the pursuit of low U factor and low solar heat gain? I have this conversation with architects sometimes with triple pane and extra low E coatings. Jim, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I think the comment I could make here is that, look at your highlight right there, clear 180. So 90% times 90% times 80%. 81 times 8, what's that, about 64% for the glass itself?
Right.
The 270 will be 70 times 80 times 80, or 70 times 90 times 80. I don't know if I can do that complicated math that quick.
What's around 40 something, I think.
50%. So you're going from 65% light transmission to 50% light transmission. I don't believe that transmission level is observable to the typical homeowner. I think what is observable, if there's a coloration or a tint involved in that, and generally tints don't start coming into play in glass until you get below 50% or maybe 40% light transmission.
I think Russell's question may also have to do with skylights. He's with a skylight manufacturer. And so I'm wondering if there's if you're going to put skylights over a large area, whether that might influence the character of the color or brightness of light in a space with natural lighting. But which might be a different case than, let's say, a window in a home. Do we have another in Q&A? We have some more questions here. Terry Adamson asks, in the home example provided, now this would be probably your building, Dave. He's wondering how warm or comfortable it is at the top of the open vaulted ceiling height with respect to the lower floor area. This popular type of high ceiling home can be problematic for heating, cooling, and comfort.
Well, yeah, that's why you often see that fan up there, because the hot air rises, right? So if you're trying to keep temperatures even throughout the house, you got to have something to propel the hot air back down and mix it with the cooler air that's lower in the house. But for winter sleeping comfort, certainly you would like to be in the upper floor, I think. And in summer sleeping comfort, you probably maybe might use the basement bedroom every once in a while if you have no air conditioning and you get really hot.
Raymond's asking, what are the panel's thoughts on the best way to educate solar tuning / elevation / existing shading like trees, proximity to bodies of water, and glazing selection? Who should be targeted?
Well, it's the perennial problem that we have, Al. If you look at our participants, they're all industry insiders. We need to reach out to the customers in some fashion, right? If we could get more customers to attend these type of tech talk session, that would be a better way. Or if we could publicize them after the fact with links that salespeople could send to various customers to try and educate them, I would say that would be a bold move, rather than just us continually discussing it amongst ourselves.
I think it would be what I would like to do, and this is maybe a project I'm going to give myself for the coming year, is I'd like to kind of summarize this information into maybe like a 2 or 3 page document that would just provide people with guidance on these subjects. How do you choose window glass with these various things in mind, with comfort in mind, with energy in mind, with respect to orientation, whether you do or don't have external shading, whether you're completely exposed to the environment. If you're in a subdivision and you're boxed in with small homes all around you, you might never encounter these problems. Your window to wall ratios might be smaller, and you may not get a lot of direct solar from any orientation, and you've never had a problem with a window in your life. And then you move to a new subdivision in Calgary, and you've got your lovely retirement home on the lake, and all of a sudden you're living in a nightmare, because you've made your choices based on past experience, not understanding that your environment you were in protected you from a lot of issues that you are now exposed to. And you just didn't realize that your windows would be affected in any way. So I think as we have more discussions along these lines, maybe we'll put together a task group to create maybe a glass selection guide, for the industry, for salespeople to use with homeowners, with customers, just as a something to help them think about the things that they would not normally think about based on their past experience. Jim, let's take a look at your second home. I think it's really very similar to the first one.
Yeah, very, very similar. In fact, the same home builder, the same configuration of windows and glass, just this time a little less drama, no window that's beyond repair. In this case, the homeowner simply called us and said, do you guys have glass options that will help keep a room cooler in summer? And we offered to the homeowner, he said, if you're going to do this, try one room. And we recommend 270 clear 180 and try one window in one room that you know is problematic, and then proceed with more. So the homeowner did that, and it didn't take longer than 2 or 3 weeks again for him to call back and ask for the additional room. So in this case, it was less glass that we changed. It was, I think, 3 combination windows, and they were all facing west, again facing a man-made lake. So very similar geographically, window configuration, size of home. Yeah, in this case, just a little less drama with the window not being destroyed. So.
Right, yeah. And in this case too, did the builder pay for the upgrade, or did the homeowner?
No, in this case, the homeowner just paid for it directly.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I don't know if you guys are still dealing with that builder. Hopefully he's ordering different windows from you in the future.
Well, yeah,
Different product line.
we were hoping that this educated them a little, but they don't buy from us anymore. So they might be in Dave's world nowadays.
Great.
Yeah, we bounce them back and forth.
Yeah, we do, right?
Unhappy customer, here, you take this guy for a while.
Yeah.
But well, let's try as an industry to have less unhappy customers and to maybe have more discussion. But again, you know, it's tough. It's tough when a builder's working with an energy advisor, and the energy advisor is recommending something like, "Hey, we're going to go high solar here. I'm going to save you money on your house," right? You know, one of the groups that we need to educate about these issues are the energy advisors themselves. Now, there are energy advisors that understand all of these issues very intimately and are very skilled at what they do. But the demand for energy advisors right now is so great in Canada with the Greener Homes program and other incentive programs that they can't train them fast enough. And a lot of them do not have the experience and they don't really get trained you know, for their jobs. They don't really get trained in selecting windows for comfort. It's not really on the curriculum. And so the temptation is just to see them as, you know, sources of free heat with no negative consequences. And that's something that, again, hopefully we can help to address as an industry, is to help them understand. At this point, I'm not sure. We have Patrick saying a comment, Russell, saying that would be super valuable, Al, and I would be interested in participating if I can. Russell, thanks. It's good to have your support and to know that you're interested. We'd be glad to include you in a task group that works on developing a guidance document for glass selection. Patrick Flannery says, I'm planning a workshop for contractors here in London, Ontario next year to explain window energy ratings, and it seems that much of this presentation could be part of it. We'll reach out to Al to discuss further. I think that would be a great idea, Patrick. We could certainly have our members here help you to put together a presentation to tackle that subject. Is there anything more in the Q&A that we've missed?
Anyway, Al, we will need to wrap it up, but yeah, I think
you're right. We're at the very end. Okay.
There's still a couple or one or two questions, but I think it's a topic that we'll need to revisit for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, again, Cam is commenting, one of the biggest hurdles is the clear 180 configuration. It gives a high energy rating and is rewarded by Energy Star and many energy advisors. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, listen, thank you for everyone who commented and in the chat and the quick Q&A. Thank you to our guests, to Dave Goldsmith, to Jim Thiessen and Jim Larsen. Really appreciated you guys being available for the show today and to share your experiences, your real world issues. Hopefully those who view this session today or who will view it on YouTube later will find it useful. And look forward to seeing you guys at Windor in November 17th and 18th. Going to be live in Toronto or virtual, whichever way you care to attend, but we do encourage you to join us at Windor. And see you next on Tech Talks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
You are a member and want to be part of the live recording of Tech Talks? Easy. Visit fenestrationcanada.ca and sign up for the next show.